G'day and welcome again to another Campfire panel discussion. And today I have, first of all, with me from Bateman's Bay, Kylie Hutchinson. How are you, Kylie?
Good, thank you, Alan. How are you?
Very good. Now, for everyone who's heard Kylie before, Kylie's a death doula. So you'll find out more about that if you don't know what that is as we talk today. And then we have the man whisperer, Kenny Mammarella-D'Cruz from over there in London. Also the host of the Men Speak men's group. How are you, Kenny?
I'm doing very, very well.
Excellent.
Yeah, good to be here again.
Fantastic. And then we have Scott Carson down there in Melbourne, and Scott's the creator of the Sunday Session men's group. So welcome again, Scott.
Yeah, g'day Alan, how are you? G'day team. Thanks again for having us. Looking forward to getting into a discussion.
Excellent. Now, we've got an interesting one today because it's one that I've really always been concerned about when people jump in and try and help other people. How do we reach out to somebody who is suffering from something like grief or mental illness, and how do we actually help them in a positive way, not just jump in with our own emotions to try and feel better about the situation, but how do we really help them? Now, Kylie, I'd like to start with you because as a death doula, you're working in this particular area all the time. So what have you found? First of all, do you find that a lot of people try and help other people without thinking, or what's the go?
I think generally, yeah, I think people do want to help, and the desire there is to help. And especially when it comes to a grief around a loss, a death, and other things, people go, oh, all right, I want to help. People don't know how to help. So it becomes awkward, and then people say something that's worse. Just because it's awkward, because we just don't know how to do it. It's not something that people are exposed to. There is this whole, you just have to be happy thing. Just look on the bright side. Just be positive. Doesn't work. We do have to sit with those emotions, and you have to let someone sit with those emotions, which is really hard. People want to, cheer you up when you're sad or upset or grieving or going through something.
I generally find a lot of that is the person themselves who doesn't want to feel it, doesn't want to be involved in it, so they just want the other person to be feeling great. Now, it takes a bit of training because I think a few people who are listening to this may not know what a death doula is. So you just want to give a quick description of that so that...
Yeah, so a death doula is someone I sit with people and help to prepare them for their own end of life, and if need be, sit with them when they die and hold their hand.
With that, there'd be a lot of training in there.
Yeah, a lot of life experience comes into it, and some training, yeah. But a lot of it is just learning to sit with people going through what they're going through. So it's literally sitting on your hands and not fixing. It's asking them, what do you want? How do you want to do this? How do you approach this? Yeah.
That totally feels like the key to me. Being there with someone rather than doing anything, fixing, making it okay, giving them a story that's so-called worse than their story to try and... No, it's just being with. And I think exactly as you say, Kylie, is I can be with your pain or your fear or your grief or your whatever because I can be with my own. And if I can quietly be with my own, then I can be with yours rather than making you shift for my own comfort. And for me, that is absolutely the key. If I can't feel mine, then I can't sit with you. And I guess not everyone can. Not everyone has, I don't know, the courage or the death wish or whatever it is to get into and feel their own feelings. And if that's the case, then just quietly sit there and just be quiet. Because surely that's more useful than engaging with the head when there's something going on in the heart or in the body or even in the soul, in the spirit somehow. So I'd say it's just about that space, exactly as you say. It's all about being in that space and allowing them their space.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, because I see that with that, you know, if you're not, as you said, if you're not able to be in your own pain and be able to deal with that in your own space, you can't really help anybody else, because you're not going to be focused on them. You're going to be focused on you, and that's where a lot of the problems come into when people rush in to try and help other people.
Or avoidance, because a lot of it is, okay, I have to be with you, so I'll show you how to avoid this, or I'll avoid this, and that kind of like leave you in limbo, or actually in greater pain, because now you have to survive me.
Exactly. And Scott, what are your thoughts in there? What have you found?
Yeah, very much so. To hold space for somebody, it's literally just to sit and listen to them and ask questions. I find the simple question of, you know, just trying to understand their why in anything, because if they can talk about their situation and open it up, that's when you can really find the essence of what, for me, what life's about the pain, working through that pain, because that on the other side of that pain is the beauty. Like I saw a quote just the other day. It was really interesting. The last gift of love that you give to somebody is grievance. You know, and being a deaf, I'm fascinated to hear more about Kylie, because I think what you do is stunning.
Oh, thank you. That's a powerful quote, though. That is. Yeah, the last thing you do is grieve. Yeah.
And it comes from a place of love. You know, so when you're sitting with somebody who is grieving, am I doing it from a place of love for them, making sure it's not about you? Because as soon as it becomes any part of you inside that conversation, then you sort of lost the trust as such. I don't know if that's the right words, but yeah, my two bobs.
You know, I was thinking with Kenny, with the work that you did with Mother Teresa, you would have come across this quite a bit there, and the way in which different people would have handled the situations.
You know, that's exactly what crossed my mind. I remember, because I worked in the Home for the Dying in Calcutta, and the men and the women were separated. And I remember, this is nothing against, were they born again Christian? I think they were born again Christians. So these squeaky clean Christians with the most perfect teeth ever showed up to volunteer. And they were like finding a dying Indian, sitting next to them, holding their hand and gazing in their eyes, and, you know, making it the sacred, painful thing. Meanwhile, the poor dying people were thinking, look, I'm trying to chill out here.
Trying to die here? I'm busy.
Which is the ultimate chill out, surely. Yeah. Can you please stop gulping at me in the eye? And then one started singing some hymn, and, you know, I was brought up Catholic, I've got nothing against it. One started singing, the whole lot started singing, and it's like, stop being so parasitic on these poor guys. And what I learned from those people was their relationship to death was so different to, in my experience, the Western relationship to death. And they were quite chuffed to be, you know, these are incredibly poor people, to have a roof over their head, to be fed, to be touched, to be changed, to be looked after, to be amongst each other without competing. And, you know, it was quite a treat for them to be there. And it was quite a treat for me, because I only speak English, for the ones who I could speak with and just hang out and laugh and talk about whatever needed to be talked about. But it wasn't so scary and weird. It was it was a normal part of life, and actually quite a healthy part of life. And what was amazing, and I noticed this with one of my best friend's father, when he was on death's door, and he phoned me, and he was just so full of love and so full of gratitude, and he was just coming from, I wouldn't call it a high place, but it was quite a fearless place that was so incredibly open-hearted. It was the most wonderful vibe to meet him. It was more extreme than the Indians and Mother Teresa, but they also came from such a place of peace. My understanding is with anything, including drugs, ayahuasca, whatever, the nasty bit is fighting it, apparently, where going with it and allowing things to flow and making them normal and making the experience normal made it such a more wonderful, peaceful ride. So culturally, it's a huge thing. And embarrassment, it's been said, and maybe it's a racist comment, but it's been said that an Englishman's dream is to go from birth to death without embarrassment. But to but to make it normal, to allow embarrassment, to allow fear, to allow joy even. A lot of people can find it too uncomfortable to be around extreme joy. And I know over there, when I lived in Sydney, I heard the term the tall poppy syndrome, where it's like, no, this is normal too, this is allowed too, and whatever emotion needs to come and pass, make it normal, make it allowed, and allow it to pass if it needs to pass. That's my take. But yeah, I was raised around a lot of fear, grief, and embarrassment around death. And I think my family were quite a healthy family with all of this. But all the same, those things were there because people were embarrassed and didn't quite know how to deal with them. And a lot of people, I remember I used to be amongst the most upset when I was an altar boy. I was more upset than a lot of the family. But then I guess maybe they survived this by laughing, gossiping, and telling all sorts of other stories. I don't know. But yeah, it can be for me a non-specific emotional passing, and to try and make mental sense out of emotional openness is totally unfair, I would say.
Yeah, because I know you think about life and you joke about it, you go, well, there's one thing you're not going to get out of it alive. So we are going to die at some point. So when we talk about it not being natural, it is natural. It's it's just as natural as birth. There's as many births as there are going to be deaths at the end of the day. Yeah. Because you're going to go through that. So and as you said, embarrassment, well, it's probably one of the problems that we have with just our own growth as well, that we keep turning around. We don't want to fail. With failure, there's embarrassment. But without failure, there's no growth. And you can't have one without the other. But we want to stifle one side of it, but grow and everything else. But what sort of growth is that? And as you said, tall poppy syndrome, as soon as somebody sticks their head up just that little bit, we cut it off. So if that's the case and that's a level that we've set it at, nobody grows above that either. The worst thing for each of us is to be part of the tall poppy syndrome, where we cut someone else down in that process, because we rob us just as much as we rob them.
And it's so easily done, I would say, especially working with men. I know, I feel I understand men better. Same. It's done like that. A little bit of criticism, a little bit of abandonment, even the wrong look, but shaming someone can put them into place so easily. And I would say it's an old-fashioned style of parenting. Humiliation, shame, criticism, and then the child will toe the line. It might break their spirit, but at least the child's been managed and the adult can carry on and do whatever. And very often it's not really noticed what's actually taking place, what's going on, because if everyone does it and the pesky children need to be kept in control, then that becomes normal. So some normals are really worth questioning. But to make all emotions normal as they pass, I would say is a lot healthier than making the quick fix of drink this or do that or whatever it is to suppress and survive it. And these days, I feel there are far too many quick fixes, including medication, where sometimes emotions, fear, everything it just needs to be felt and it needs to pass. And if it's not going to happen now, then it might happen, I don't know, midlife crisis or much later, because for me, it leaves a limitation on the experience of this person's life until they can feel into it and feel through it. And I don't blame people if they don't do it because they don't feel safe. But this is where a doula or a men's group or a best friend or a poor unsuspecting granny on a park bench, whoever it is that will be there to just not even hold it, but be with it as it's opened up. It's like to make it safe, but it's like, for me, feeling into it and feeling through it can set a person free.
As Scott, you were saying before with the final gift being that grief, that now even that little granny sitting on the bench, if the gift that that person is giving to the one who's going through that pain and everything else, all that final moments, it's absolutely magnificent. So instead of shying away from it, it's something that we should embrace with a certain amount of pride.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
And that's funny you say that, because it's just where my head was going. Because with Kylie being a doula, it's something I would like to ask her, because I don't believe any of us sitting on the panel today would fear going up to somebody dying and listen to them. Right? I don't feel that we would just do that, and I think we do that within our lives. But Kylie would have experience with people who aren't comfortable with that. What would be that experience, Kylie? Because that's something I personally don't understand, and I think it's something that I myself, if I see someone in grief or in pain in some ways, I'll walk straight up and ask them straight away exactly, how are you going? And I want to know how they're going. Whereas most people fear just asking just that question. Being that I don't fear it, I don't understand that. Maybe Kylie's seen more of it to understand it.
It is a little bit. There is, I said to someone the other night, everyone else, you know, sometimes you walk into a room and everyone's like, oh, see the elephant, you know, the elephant. And I'm like, whoa, check out the elephant. That's me. I'm like, if it's awkward, if it's weird, if nobody wants to talk about it, I'm the one going, woohoo, check it out. Look at that. You know, I've just come out and say it. And generally speaking, that ice gets broken. You know, some people really don't want to face it. Some people don't want it, don't want to know, don't want to. And I've heard stories of people who have, you know, told the nursing staff, no, you're not to tell my family that I'm here. You're not to tell anyone what's going on. They don't want to talk to a social worker, don't want to talk to anyone, don't want to plan for it. And I don't understand it. But I think that fear had to have been addressed way back before we got to this point, you know. That's a huge fear, whatever that fear might be. It might be, fear of death, or it might be fear of leaving everyone alone.
It's funny because I'm fascinated with what you do, Kylie, because one of the things that I myself believe in is the fact that heaven and hell is here. We live heaven and hell before we pass, in the aspect that if we work through our problems and work through our pain and work through our situations and we live an open and honest life and do the best we can for our fellow man, then in our latter days, that all comes back to us. So we're living in heaven. Whereas if we don't do those things we don't settle our scores, we don't go and confront the things we needed to confront, we end up with a lot of regret and pain in our dying days. So we basically end up in hell for the latter years of our life. So Kylie would see a fair bit of that, and just fascinates me at how you're an incredibly strong but a gorgeous person to do what you do.
Thank you. I'm not alone. There's a big team of us, but I'm supported by a good team. There's when I was training, the lady who trained me said the way you live when you approach someone, how they're going to die is how they lived. And it really is. If they lived generously, if they lived with love and they forgave, that's how they approach death as well. There's, you know, if you're a little bit narcissistic and selfish and needy, That's how you'll approach death.
Yeah. But when somebody passes, it's all about our feeling of loss and that for them. So that's why we grieve. Whereas I remember one of my friends had passed away, and at the funeral, natural grief, he passed. But then the wake, I've never seen anything so noisy with so much laughter, because all the stories of what he was like and everything else, and that's what everybody got into, and the whole energy shifted on it. So we'd gone from being that fear of the moment to actually enjoying his life. And that's what a wake's supposed to be about. It's about rejoicing of the passing of the person, their life that they had before that, and how it impacted on them. And of course, the greater the impact they've had on you, of course, the loss is going to be greater again. Mm. But it should be the focus of the love of having them in your life previously to what we're actually going to be out without them from now. So, being able to separate from that, being able to take our feelings of what we feel inside and realise that person's passing, we need to be able to, or they're in pain or whatever, and focus on them and take the focus off ourselves. And that becomes extremely hard for a lot of people to do. Because as you said, they haven't dealt with their own situations as well. Mm. As Kenny said, if you can't work through yours, and you can't help them work through theirs.
Yeah. And people will get triggered by something, someone will say, my dad died suddenly, and then someone else will be like, oh, I don't want to deal with the sudden death thing, or I don't want to deal with aging. They'll say, oh, my dad's getting dementia, or my mum's getting this, or had a fall, and this is happening, and this is happening. And when I hear that, I go, okay, some of that, I'll just be like, yeah, I really relate to that one, or not. But it's not about me in that moment. It's not. They don't need to hear my story. They don't need to hear, oh yeah, totally going through it. Know what you get. There's that's not helpful. It's whatever they're going through and however they're going through it.
That's it. And as you said, when somebody says, oh, somebody passed away, one of my quick first questions is to them, well, how old was the person? As soon as they tell me they're in their 70s or 80s or whatever, then I start asking them about their life.
Yeah.
And talking about that, I've got an old mate of mine in his 80s when his wife passed away. It was one of the first questions I asked was, got him talking about the experiences they had. Yes, he was feeling the grief of having lost her, and probably in that conversation, probably bringing that back to mind, because this is a great time they have, but all of a sudden now she's gone. But we spoke about it so much, and we still get together every weekend, have a coffee with him and chat, and the stories keep coming out.
Yeah.
And we laugh a lot.
Yeah.
And and I thought by doing that, just focusing on him and what he was going through, it wasn't my stuff. She was a lovely person. I missed her and everything else. But if I'd been focusing on my grief, it wouldn't have helped him one little bit.
Yeah, understanding someone's story is the key to it. I think dealing with any grief. Just listening to you speak now, it's reaffirming a few things that I've been through with people. But all I ever want to do is understand them. So we talk deeply, and I keep asking questions about what happened at that point. Why did that happen? And you get some of the most beautiful stories. So in grief, there's actually some absolute beauty.
Yeah.
So
how has it been?
Yeah, Kenny?
How has it been in your men's group, Scott? Is it something that you talk about, whether it's fear of death or the death of someone or anything like that, or has it not come up?
Yeah, no, we talk about it. Like a couple of boys are very much on the Stoic principles, where they talk about death with one of the boys, Warren, he's a classic. Great bloke. Hopefully we'll get him on here one day. And he talks about death with his kids all the time. I talk about it with my son regularly as well, because it's life, like literally. So one of his chickens got taken by our new neighbours who moved next door. And my son's 8 years old, and they're dash hound. I don't know how it did it, but it got one of his chickens. And like all dogs, but anyway. But one of the things that we did with Oscar is I asked him how he wanted to deal with it. So it wasn't about me; it was his chicken. How do you want to deal with it? He's 8 years old, and his opportunities were go to the next door neighbour, talk to the next door neighbour, and say, "Hey, listen, your dog has killed my chicken. I'm really upset about it. I don't want to do anything about your dog because I know how much I love my pet. Or, you know, we can go to the council and complain. And because we talk about death and death's a part of life, this is my proud dad moment. But who chose to go and speak to the next door neighbour and talk about it and work out a way in which we could protect our chickens, you know, or sorry, his chickens. So, yeah, we talk about it in amongst the guys, you know, like it's, the more we talk about any sort of grief, the better it becomes. Providing you come from a point of understanding, not a point of projecting your opinion.
Your opinion.
And having that conversation with a child, a young child, because your boy's only, what, 8 years old? Is that how?
Yeah, 8 years old.
Yeah. So, you know, when I was a kid and that, when everybody passed away, we were pushed out. We were moved away from it all. We were cut off from it. So we didn't even know. And that in itself, all of a sudden, we're out there on our own and there's no adults around us. And we know something's wrong, but we've been excluded. So is this where some of the misnomers or the misunderstandings about how to deal with this come from? Is that the way we've been educated all the way back from the early days when we have had death around us and we've had to shut it down or we've been shut out? And so it was something you didn't talk about. You didn't go anywhere near. And so when somebody does pass away in later life, you just don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, listening to you there, because if you don't have the experiences, you can't do anything. Everything you do is based upon the experience in your life. And if somebody does pass away or someone is dealing with grief and you have got your child with them, like I'll take Oscar everywhere with me. I will not shun him from everything. We will happily sit and talk with homeless people. My story's that line anyway. So, but we'll happily sit there and talk to them. So the only way in which we're going to be able to teach the next generation is actually have them there, not shun people away. That's a really interesting point. Sorry, I cut Kenny off. So
yeah, Kenny.
I was going to say pretty much the same thing. Is the things that kids or anyone are shielded from creates an incredible intrigue of either I should not go there or there's something really juicy there. And I guess in my work with men, very often these things get sexualized or fetishized because there was something that I was kept away from. So is it bad? Is it good? Like whatever the grown-ups do when after we're sent to bed, what are we missing out on? Is it, you know, it becomes a thing. And then this thing needs to be undone and normalized. And listening to the way that you are with your son is just like, I wish there were more fathers like you around. It sounds absolutely wonderful to include him in life, to give him the choices, to give him the consequences, to allow him, because how many adults would have the courage or the purity to knock on the door and say, look, this is how I feel, this is what happened, and how can we deal with it? I think a lot of people would either go into confrontation or avoidance or some story or whatever. But the way that you are teaching your son is absolutely amazing. Those life skills are worth their weight in gold. So hats off to you.
Thank you, Kenny, because I actually was very scared to be a father. I did say I didn't want to be a father. It took me a long time. And then when it happened, like I've spoken to Alan about it, I failed at the first hurdle. And my life now with my son it's everything, you know. And through grief, I now want to be the best person I can. And because I've worked through grief, like everybody else here, you know, it's the importance of working through your grief is that's where the real good stuff in life starts to happen, you know, when there's no avoidance. So, and it's I'm just trying to get a few things out because I would like to give people a really clear guideline on what to say to somebody when they are in grief, because I personally don't think there's anything you can say that's wrong, providing it comes from a place of love and interest in them. Because that's one thing in my life that through family, like it took 41 years for me to have a family function without a major fist fight. That's you know, that was only last year, which is a big achievement. And it's all about this grief that people, people aren't dealing with the situations because they don't speak honestly about their situation, and it's their own honesty. What's the authentic truth? What's that, Kenny? You described that really well when someone talks about their authenticity, the way they see it. No, come on, Scott. No, you know how you say when it's one person's opinion,
reality, or
one person's reality is different to another person's reality.
right.
Do you know what I mean? Because based upon their experiences in life, that's how they see things. You know, and so yeah, so I'm a bit off track here, but I'd like to get back to it because I really would like to. This is a really important thing, I think, because I see so many people shy away from talking to people who are in pain because, you know, and they shouldn't fear it. You know, and it's okay for me to say that, but to get action on that's a whole other thing. So maybe Kylie can give us some good guidance on what we should do there.
Do you know, before that, if I can just say, the guidance you're giving your son and the guidance you're giving everyone who watches this, that's where it's at. And if people fear it, then let them fear it. That's part of their journey. But I don't remember exactly what you said. I think it was about grief. But it sounds like this is my interpretation, and I could be wrong, is yes, the trigger or the catalyst was grief, but it sounds like you went through grief to come from love. So it's no longer grief fueled, it's now love fueled, and the grief was the catalyst. So I would say that you are doing this in every word that you're saying and in the way that you're bringing up your son. So yeah, definitely, I'm sure Kylie's got stuff to say, but you've just said it as well, so good on you.
Thank you. Can I just jump in just for one small thing? Sorry, because we're here, I want to tell you what happens when men get together inside our men's groups and we work together and we talk about things. I had a story I've told here before. I want to tell you in particular, Kenny, because I'm really proud of this guy. This guy, we talk about talking our truth, and with our kids in particular, any conversation they want to talk about, we talk about it point blank. We don't hide from it. We just say as it is. He got a letter home from school saying that his daughter, who's in the same class as my son, had been into the senior girls' toilets, and they seen a girl come out with a used pad. Because he talks his truth, he's got home, he's read the letter, he's turned around to his wife, who was a bit concerned about talking to the daughter because, you know, it's a first conversation. She obviously didn't have a great experience. Here's a man that says to his wife, I've got this. She looked at him, she says, what? He says, I've got this. He went and sat with his daughter. He sat down with his daughter and explained to her what her period was. She started freaking out. I'm going to bleed. She says, yes, for about 5 to 7 days. She goes, what? And he's like, yes, it's all right, honey. But it's going to happen for once a month for the rest of your life. And then so beautiful. But the story behind it isn't, it's the man went and spoke to his daughter and just told her how it was, didn't shy from it. How beautiful is that relationship going to be? And Alan and I have talked about it before. Plant the seed, water the plant, prune the plant. He pruned the plant at the perfect time for growth. That tree is going to blossom like no tomorrow. And at any point, she now feels comfortable enough to go and speak to her father. You know? So, yeah. So I had to share that. Now I'm going to...
I love how that is no longer a female dirty little secret. And very often, that's what it's created to be. And there's nothing that's dirty about it. There's no reason for it to be a secret. I remember when I was much younger with my first marketing business, we'd check in the morning to see how we are. And if people were premenstrual or moonstrual, going bonkers with the moon or whatever was going on, then it was named and we could all take care of what needs to be done amongst us rather than, right, we shouldn't talk about this and we should put on a good show. What absolute crap. It's like, name what's going on, and then we can all own it, and then we can all work it through. And sure, I don't know whether you feel this in the men's groups or in working communities, but whoever has the pain, the fear, the joking, the sarcasm, the whatever it is generally, I feel, holding it for the community until we all take ownership of it. And I remember when a dark horse, this guy came to men's groups for a whole year. I think it was once a month in those days. And for the year, he had the courage to say pass to everything, absolutely everything. And it made quite a lot of people feel uncomfortable or curious, or it's not fair, or whatever it is that came up for them, until he joined the closed group. And in the closed group, he spilled the beans about so much, and people went, oh my God, how has he managed to turn out so well? You know, the past thing forgot, he just needed to be safe. It all came out, he did his work, and he came to the last one of, we do the closed months and 6 month batches, and people usually stay for years, but he did his 6 months or year or whatever, and when he felt ready to go, he contacted me and said, well, you lot are never going to see me again. I gave you a false name. You can't trace me even if you wanted to. And it was quite shocking for the men that were left in his group. And for me, it was important to say to them, this bloke's done his time with us, he's done his work. Whatever it is he needed to do or undo, he's done it. And you could now project all sorts of things on him, that he was devious or he cheated or whatever it was. And that was his way of expressing emotion, or that was his way of surviving, or that was his way to be safe as he went through this, whatever it was. Let's say his name's Tommy. And I said to them, and now it's up to all of us to own our inner Tommy. It was a lot easier when he was holding this for all of us, but now we need to own that part and work through that part and accept that part. There you go, minor feedback.
But what a gift, though. Like, he has given every one of you guys a gift.
Yeah.
He taught you so much by saying pass.
Yeah.
Ah.
Oh my God, the courage for that for a whole year. Meanwhile, everyone else was spitting it out, but he held his space. And people had no choice but to respect it or disrespect it. But what are you going to do?
What time is it?
I was just going to say, is that the ice cream truck?
Probably, what is the time over here? It's 12 minutes to 8, so that must be the 12 minutes to 8 bell.
So Kylie, what are your thoughts on all that?
Scott and Kenny both said, they're wanting to hear from me what I do, and just done it. I just sat here and listened to two amazing men, and Alan, I know you're amazing, but I've listened to Kenny, I've listened to Scott, and I've heard their stories, and I didn't say anything. I didn't interrupt with my stuff. I didn't offer any advice. I just sat here going, wow, check out these guys. And you guys went from talking about grief, about loss, grief about there's loss in life transitions as well, divorces or loss of a job, or that's all grief. A loss of marriage breakdown, that's all grief. And then you talked about premenstrual women and menstruating women and men talking, and really went there. And amazing. But what I do is I just sat and let you go. And that's all you do. That's all you have to do with someone in grief. Just let them go. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about them and what they're going through. And they need to go through it. People need to, whatever situation they're in. Tommy, he needed to say pass for a year because what he did was amazing. He eventually, faced some stuff, and he had to put in layers to protect himself with that. Like, he's obviously got some pretty deep, full-on stuff going on. And you guys were there and planted the seed, helped him a little bit, and then he'll go on from there. But it's something I think in my family we all talked about death, and we had ceremonies for the pets that died, and there was no holding back from it. I'd go and visit my nan, and Mum would say, Nan's getting old, she's going to die soon. You better spend some time with Nan, you know. But a lot of families aren't like that. They're like, hustle, and you know. But we had various ceremonies for various pets, and a big ceremony when my Nan did die, and that's not anything we shied away from, which is probably a skill that I have now because of it. And I definitely see it with people that shuffle them out and say, you know, oh, the children don't need to see it, or, you know. But they do, and they need these skills. It's like teaching kids about money. You can't just get a kid to 17 and give them a job and a bank account and be like, go good with your money. You're right. Like, no, they need to learn before that. And it's no different with grief or life or working or money. They've got to have the skills. Yeah.
The thing that I really love too I was watching, watching you while the two men were both talking, and the way you just sat quietly and everything else. Even when we talk about grief and everything else, just come back to husbands and wives, and the husband's going through something, the wife needs to know what's going on. Imagine the impact on that relationship when the wife is able to do for them what you just did in this discussion as well, is realising it's not about us as individuals, it's about the other person. And so setting the environment up so that they can then either deal with it themselves or be able to then open up and start talking. So levels of grief, no matter what level it's at. Kenny.
And also to have the space to speak the unspeakable. I'm thinking about one of the closed groups where someone's child died before his wife gave birth. And it was, she was pregnant at the same time as another guy in the group. So to openly talk about her carrying the child and giving birth and what happened and how he felt, and then for both men to talk about their fears, and the one with the live child to talk about his fears and his embarrassment and how he feels about celebrating his when the other one lost his, and to go into the not the details of this, but the depth of this, whatever was up. And then for the same guy's wife to be pregnant again and not just celebrate it, but for him to talk about his fears because of what happened last time, and how to communicate, how to manage himself, how to manage his wife, how to manage the fears, and to go through it. It's like, it's not just about death, it's about unpacking what's happening in life and what's happening in the shadow, and what's happening with fear. And then it also, on the other extreme, on the other end of the spectrum, some guy, he must be in his mid to late 70s, his wife sending him to a men's group. You will go to a men's group. And it was basically because this old codger, a lovely old man, his best friend from when he was 8 years old died. And he was in grief, deep grief, because he was used to this part of him coming alive and not really needing lots of other relationships because so many needs were met with his best friend. So he started coming to the groups and he started opening up, and his personality changed from who do I need to be and how do I do this with everyone to being more and more and more of who he is. And to realize that parts of him that were on hold and grieving because they had nowhere to come alive, some of them could come alive here, and some of them he just needed to accept that there might be pain initially because there's nowhere for them to come alive, and he needs to own them. And then for him to go through his wife getting ill and the fears while she was dying, and then her dying, and to come to the group while he's in absolute bits and terror before, during, and after the death, and to be held through it, the tragedy of his best friend, the tragedy of his wife, but not to have to do this alone, and to be able to talk about all the darkness and all the rage and all the pain. It's like, this is the taboo stuff that really that needs to come alive. This is what life is actually about, not the niceties, but the deepest, darkest thoughts and feelings that actually bring someone alive, rather than should shut them down for the sake of niceties. And the honor to be around men as they go through this and truly be with them, rather than thinking, right, how am I going to manage this? How am I going to, if he comes to this jolly, jolly group and he brings the death of his wife, is that going to not make it jolly? No, it's like space for absolutely everything to exist as part of life within a couple of 2.5 hours, because this is where everyone learns. And every time this guy left the room to go to the loo, which was quite often, the number of blokes that said, when I grow up or when I grow old, I want to be just like him. Meanwhile, it's like, he could have never believed that. But I told him, it's like, what, me? But it's in living a true life, I feel, that it gives others permission to live their true life, rather than this is the way to put on a good show and survive.
Yeah. Excuse me. You actually, it's like my first father-in-law, when he passed away, he'd lived a full life, and just before he passed away, he'd had stomach cancer, and they've removed most of his stomach in that process. And then when he got well enough, he went back to school in his 70s and started teaching kids again. He was working with all the problem kids. And so when he passed away, we had a church that was massively full of people. Never seen so many school kids there in my life. And just before he did pass away, one of the things he said, and his attitude to death was quite open and everything else, he said, I really want to put on my tombstone, I told you I was sick. And he was pretty much like that. And his whole attitude was, well, even when he was sick and he had the cancer and everything else, it was, how do I live my life to the fullest? How do I keep impacting with people? And so at his funeral, yes, a lot of grief, but I kept thinking about the impact it had on people, and I thought, what a great measure of one's life. So my focus on his passing was going away from the grief of losing him to the wonderment and the joy of having had him in my life in the first place. Yeah. And so...
I think that's a big thing, because when people are in your life and they do pass, they've been a gift.
Mm.
They haven't, like, if you actually get the opportunity to know somebody and love them, wow, how many people on this planet, and you actually got to know somebody? It's an absolute gift. And the more we live our lives, and I'm talking live our life, we talk about our life. We talk about everything inside our life. Finances, you talk about everything. Don't have anything hidden. The more open you are, the more chance you've actually got of getting a result in things, because you talk stories, you tell stories. People, you know what, I actually know something for that. But you just got to share your stories. And the one thing I'm sort of listening to here is everyone's got stories, and we're listening to each other's stories, and we're learning from those stories. So to hear somebody's story is when you're going to learn.
And that's it. And the only way you learn those stories is to sit down and listen to them. And when the stories really come out, quite often it's the end of someone's life. So if you really want to pick up some great stories, be there for other people when they're into that state.
Like Kylie.
Yeah. Yes. You do hear stories, and you hear regrets, I think, is the thing. You start to go, do I need to... People start to ask themselves, do I need to finalise something, say something?
What other regrets?
Oh, there's actually a lady that wrote a book. I think it was called The 10 Greatest Regrets of the Dying or something. But everyone, as I say to people all the time, nobody ever gets to the end of life and goes, oh, I wish I'd spent more time at work. I wish I'd had a better car. Nobody ever does that. No. And I think Alan did you interview a man you did one, didn't you? Interviewed a guy and he interviewed a millionaire, like the guy, a multi-millionaire. And he regretted not spending a day seeing his kids play sport.
That's it. And this is the thing that the things that we chase through life, quite often they're not the things that we really want. And it's in those last moments that we realise what we've actually lost or missed. And it's the same thing. If you stop children, what Scott, you're doing with your son, he's involved in all that. He understands it all, so that when he gets older and that, he's not going to feel that he's missed anything in his life. So that's a gift, by showing somebody else's pain and be able to help them to be part of that as well and understand that person's passing. That's giving that person a gift as well, so that when they get older, how many times have you heard people turn around and say, oh, I didn't see my wife or my husband or my mother or my father, they passed away and I just didn't get to finish that business.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to know long before, be able to sit down in their space and chat, and a lot of things we thought we were worried about that we, later on, if we missed it, that we didn't cover, we would need to cover it anyway, because in that moment, talking to the person and spending time with them, all of those things we were worried about dissolve away. And what we have is that true connection, as you said, Kenny, with living through it and with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's, that's a real gift.
Sorry. I've heard it said that those that grieve the most or the hardest are the ones with the greatest unfinished business, where otherwise it's just in flow with love. There isn't that on hold, that limbo or that anger or that what am I going to do with this now?
Yeah, it's surprising what you... Sorry, go ahead.
It seems like the three Western taboos are money, sex, and death. And it's like, you know, what are the things that often run people's lives in the shadow? Well, it's crazy, eh? You
know, it used to be one of the things we didn't talk about was religion, but now we just like putting the boot into that as much as we possibly can. But yeah, as you say, it's those things that we shy away from, and because of the fear of it, that's why it has a control over us. The more we're able to step into it and deal with it, then it doesn't have a control anymore.
Yeah.
It's funny because the workshop I did a week and a half ago, we're doing it again this Sunday because of the people that were there. We had 9 people inside the workshop. Everybody had their different stories. We had no idea how that was going to pan out. And I shared my story. Ma shared her story. So we made it safe by opening up our wounds because they could see we're all authentic. And then what happened inside that room was just phenomenal. People opened up about things, including my wife, opened up about her accident for the first time. Like, this is 6 years later, because there was a safe environment for that and because everyone was just there to listen. But every single person inside that room just grew from listening to each other's stories. You know, so talking about grief, talking about pain, we're sharing it with as many people as you can. It's actually giving them a gift. You're unburdening yourself, but you're giving them a gift. You're giving them a story of how to actually deal with grief. You know, because it's like, I'm a firm believer that we all gain from our pain. And, you know, my biggest pain has put me here today with you. So, yeah, sorry, off track again.
Perfectly on track.
Yeah.
I think I probably will have to bring it to a close because I think we've been up to well onto an hour and that. God, these things go so fast. You know, every time, and I say to everybody on that I'm greedy because I get a chance to sit with all these people who give me all these stories. I walk away a richer man every time I do it. So I'm really thankful that you came along. Kylie, love the way that you're doing that because I think that's a lesson for everybody in being able to sit in someone's space, just listen to what they're saying and everything goes. And I can see the power of the work that you do as a death doula. People should be getting in touch with you on that and talking to you about your services very much so. And as usual, Kenny, all the gold that you're coming out, and when Scott said to you, you know, what was it you said before? I thought, Scott, you're wasting your time. There's too much gold that comes out of this, man. You've got to learn how to steal it right on the moment like I've been doing.
Well, I wasn't very good with my note-taking today.
Well, the good thing is you'll be able to go back over the video and listen again, so it's not lost. This is one of the reasons why I listen to these a couple of times after I've run them as well. But again, Scott, as well, with what you've delivered today and what you've shared about your son and everything else, great lessons in there. So, as I said before, I just love being in everyone's presence when I do these things. So, thank you very much for having been here today. And to
Thank you.
everybody who's been listening in, I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've got any questions for any of the panelists, just put the comments in the underneath the video, and let's get some talking going. If you want to connect with them directly, please do that as well, because this is all about the people in the group. It's not about the group itself. It's about what you put into it and what you take out of it. And I hope you all do a lot of both. Anyway, thanks everybody for being here, and we'll see you on the next panel discussion. Bye for now.
Bye.